Doodle trees and landscapes. Let's review. Last week we learned how to draw lots of different doodle trees using a variety of lines. Today we can learn how to turn doodle trees into a creative landscape using lots of different variety of lines. Wavy lines, dotted lines, zigzag line, bumpy lines, all the kind of lines that you know how to draw, you're going to add together to create a magical landscape with your doodle trees. Question 1. How do you draw a landscape? First, you need to know how to show space and distance. Artists use some art tricks to show landscapes in their artwork and make them look real. First off, the foreground is what you see at the bottom of the landscape that's closest to you. Things in the foreground will often overlap things in the middle ground and the background because these are things that are right next to you. They're closest to you, so they're larger. This is the foreground. Next is the middle ground. The middle ground is the space between the foreground and the background. The middle ground, things are higher up. Notice how the tree is up on a hill, but it's also higher up on the paper. These things in the middle ground are smaller than things in the foreground because you want them to appear as if they're farther away. They also overlap the areas in the background oftentimes. The background back here, this is where you will find your horizon line that separates your sky space from your ground. You will also put objects that you want to appear farther away. We make these objects much smaller and put them on the horizon line. This gives the appearance of distance. Can you find the foreground, middle ground, and background in these two images? Take a second and try. Question number 2. What kind of details do you want in your landscape? It's up to you whether you want waters, hills, mountains, grass, making it a desert with plants and rocks. But everybody should have a foreground, a middle ground, and a background with some type of trees. I am so excited to show you how to get started. So boys and girls, get all your art supplies together like markers and crayons and colored pencils, and you can watch and draw along with me.
All right, friends, we're ready to get started drawing our doodle trees and landscapes. For today, you're going to need a white sheet of paper, clean, no lines on it, just like usual. Definitely a pencil. A black marker, if you have it, is going to be your best friend. It doesn't matter if it's a thin one or a thick one. You could also use a Sharpie if you have that available. If you don't have a black marker, your next best thing to use is a black crayon. And then for coloring, we're going to use marker, crayons, or colored pencils. But we're going to combine some of these too. So we're going to go ahead and get started. When we were talking about the landscapes, I explained to you up close and far away, and that's what we're going to be doing with our landscapes. We're going to start by drawing up close first. That is the foreground, then the middle part, which is the middle ground, and the part that is far away is called the background. So foreground, middle ground, background is always the highest on your paper. Taking my pencil, I'm going to start down here at the bottom and just draw a gentle wavy line. Doesn't have to be too bumpy. Not too many bumps, it's easier to draw on. So this right here, this is called my foreground. Things that are up close are in my foreground. Next I'm going to draw my middle ground, and I'm going to add some hills in my middle ground. Again, just kind of like gentle waves, nothing too bumpy. You don't ever want to do hump, hump, hump because that makes it harder to draw on. And then up here is going to be my background. I'm going to draw the horizon line, which is that line that separates the sky from the ground. So there's my horizon line. Things that are above the horizon line is the sky. So the horizon line separates the sky from the ground. Things that are below the horizon line, this is all your ground. So that's why you need a horizon line. Now I'm going to start with what is up close first, just like I have here in this page. Notice how this tree starts all the way at the bottom and goes all the way up into the background. That's because that is up close. It's in the foreground. So it overlaps a lot of the things in the background. So you can draw your up close trees any way that you want to. You might want to look at some examples of some of the doodle trees that you did last week. So my up close tree is going to have a really long, tall tree trunk. I am going to go ahead and use a black marker to outline that so you can see it really well. I want you to continue to draw with pencil first. And then my first doodle tree is going to be kind of shaped like this. And I want to think about what kind of creative doodle branches I can add in that doodle tree. Oh, I kind of like that. That looks pretty doodly. And then, after I do my up-close tree, I want to do some trees in my middle ground. So I think about what kind of tree do I want here in my middle ground. I want to do the trees that kind of reminded me of like an ice cream scoop that just kind of go wavy, 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 wavy like that. I think that looks pretty cool. Looks kind of yummy. I'm going to make 2 of those in my middle ground. And you notice how the things that are in the middle ground that are sitting higher up are smaller than the things in the foreground because they're farther away. Make the same kind of tree here, my ice cream scoop tree. And then I'm ready to do the trees that are way off in the background. Now the things that are way off in the background are your smallest trees. It's not because they're baby trees, it's because they're so far away. And that's also where you can add a mountain if you'd like to do that. I'm going to add a little mountain first. Whoops, I bumped into my tree there. And then add some little doodle trees right in front of my mountain. See, I just need to make short little lines. And I think for these doodle trees, I want to do just some little dashes for them. Make those happy little trees, just like Bob Ross would say. So those are my trees that are farther away in the background. Once you have a few trees on your paper, you can think about some of the other details that you might want to add, especially in the foreground. I've had some friends who have done other kind of really cool plants that they've kind of invented. What could they look like? Remember, these are doodle landscapes. They don't have to be real life plants. You can kind of just make them up how you go, how you really want them to look like. They could be flowers, they could be pumpkins for fall, any kind of details that you think would look really interesting in your foreground to make your landscape better to look at. And then going off into the distance, we're going to start adding details using marker and crayon. So we're going to also use marker to add patterns with. So I'm going to go ahead and outline my pencil lines with marker. I'm going to make these some nice grassy hills, and I think I've decided that I want to make this water, so I'm actually going to outline that with blue. Now you notice how I'm skipping over my trees here so I don't draw my water through my tree. That looks pretty cool. Now I'm going to take my marker and go back in and add patterns. Obviously, a wavy line pattern makes a lot of sense when you're doing water. Now remember, your landscape does not need to look like mine. You could make it any way you wanted. You could make a stream here or a lake like I am, or you could make yours a pathway or a roadway. I think I'm going to add some pattern now on this. Some dot patterns. I'll show you what we're going to do with the crayons in just a minute. Crayons are going to be used to fill in the white spaces. Now, if you're in third grade, my third grade friends, I really want you to push yourself and add as much detail as you can, stretching that third grade brain of yours. You might want to add a few more extra trees or maybe some patterns that have more color to them since you're a little bigger. Ooh. So after I get a nice pattern there on the bottom, I can go ahead and add some more details in the sky. Maybe I want to think about what time of day it is and make some interesting clouds in the sky that don't look like regular plain old clouds. Maybe I want to make some type of a sun. Maybe it's a sunset. And I want to do some doodles in my sun to make my sun not just your normal everyday regular sun like that. After you get your patterns on your ground and add some details in your sky, that's when you're going to go and start using your crayons to color in the background. So I'm going to quickly just add a few more marker details before I add color with my crayons. And remember, when you're doing this, you don't have to use regular normal colors. Because this is a doodle landscape, you can really, really, really use your imagination. Like maybe since it's fall, my tree is going to have some fall colors in it. Add a nice orange pattern in my tree. Maybe some yellow. Give it kind of that golden fall look. Now you notice how I'm not coloring anything in all the way with my markers because the markers are just going to be for adding patterns and details. Then you're going to use your crayons to color in the spaces. And that's what's nice about crayons or colored pencils is because they're lighter than markers, you can color right over top of the marker and you can still see all those lovely patterned lines that you made with your marker. They still show up. So how do you know when you're done? When you have all the big white spaces colored in all the way, and you feel really satisfied with your artwork. The more time you spend coloring, the better you're going to like it. Now, if you do not have time to finish this week, boys and girls, that is totally fine. I want you to take your time on this. And you can finish it up whenever you get a chance over the weekend, or you can finish it up next week. That's fine too. I hope you really have fun and enjoyed drawing your doodle tree landscape. I can't wait to see them. Goodbye.
Have fun drawing, boys and girls.